What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, NVIDIA, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers, and break down some important resistance levels to be watching for on SPY and other stocks out there. Break down what's happening with the economic calendar so far for today, what's going on with some earnings, what you should be watching for as time progresses. Before I break the devil's information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am personally not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed up to 15 free stocks. That offer ends very soon as well. In my previous video, I mentioned to you all that SPY did have potential to push a little bit higher. We actually pushed all the way up to about 517.5 during the pre-market just 1 hour ago. But ever since we hit that resistance, SPY is coming down just a bit and showing a little bit less strength than before. So the question is, are we about to turn from here and start to see some downside, or is SPY going to try to break out higher one more time? Well, this is going to depend on some factors out there, so I just want to talk about what those factors are. Right now, there's not really much data coming out. It's a very, very quiet day for today, which is March 13th, 2024. We're pretty much just at very minor data, except at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the 17-week bill auction, and 1 p.m. we have the 30-year bond auction all coming out. So we'll just have to see what happens from there. On top of this, I just want to mention that some earnings came out in the morning. We had Dollar Tree and Petco announced their earnings. Then we have a couple of others as time goes on. Just to be very blunt with you and real quick, Dollar Tree did not do too well overall. They actually missed on some of their earnings, and they also ended up closing over 1,000 stores for last year, which is not the best of news. On top of this, they are projecting that for the first half, the fiscal half of 2024, we could be seeing quite a few more stores closing. It would close about 600 is what is projecting again for the first half of this year, and 370 more over the period of a few years, which is some bad news for them. Overall, in terms of their net loss, it was actually $1.71 billion, not as great as what people were kind of looking for, and they missed on EPS. It was only $2.55 below estimates. So guidance is not that great. They may be closing more stores, not the best of earnings. That's why the share price is down. Petco, on the other hand, is improving a little bit. We actually saw some news about how, they met on EPS. Revenue is decent overall, meeting expectations, and they may be having a new chief executive coming out. That's the former Best Buy executive is going to be stepping in as the interim for the time being. So that's some good news for them. And he was saying some optimistic things for their future. So not bad whatsoever with the new improvements being made. This could also improve, and we could see some growth as well. So that's why the share price is up. But that's it for Petco. Now, a couple of more things about the news before I break down the charts. Right now, market momentum is pretty decent as the market is pushing and pushing. But now we're approaching some tight resistance levels on SPY and the QQQ on the S&P 500 and NASDAQ. So we're going to be watching these resistance levels. IBM is cutting its staff size. The company told employees that its marketing and communications division is going to be making a lot of changes, and that's going to be very important. They're going to be actually looking to see new changes to thousands of jobs. We're still looking for specific details about this. They did announce a plan earlier in 2023 to replace 8,000 jobs. So we'll see if it's something similar to that during this next announcement. There's also some new things coming out as Adidas warned that its North American sales will keep suffering as it continues to sell off the remaining Yeezy inventory. So that's not so good news for them. There's a lot of things going on involving that. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but that is not the best of news for them. There are more problems with Boeing. Boeing's top buyers are starting to feel the effects of its latest MAX crisis, and we're actually seeing more news about that because of other airlines being impacted by it. And this is actually starting to affect how people are viewing the company, and it's leading to kind of like struggling stability in supply chains, which is some bad news for Boeing. Besides that, I'm not seeing anything else that's worth noting, at least on the news. So let's now just talk about the charts. How are things looking? So for SPY, I just want to note that we have this resistance right here, at 517.5. If we break past this, we could be pushing towards the all-time high at 518.22. And if we break that, our next target is going to be up here between 519 and 520. All the way up here is where we're going to likely see a top before we try to reject. Now, if we fail to break 517.5, because that's the resistance it's been stuck at so far, because we're just range bound right now. We're going to be watching 516.5 as support. If we lose this, a bigger drop is coming to this imbalance to 515.6 and then 515 flat. And if we lose that, an even bigger drop is coming to these lower levels, such as like 513.5, 512.5, and etc. So we're going to be watching to see how this ends up looking. And just note that a big rejection could be coming right here. But just to be safe, even though we are getting some signals that show some weakness in SPY, just to be safe when we're watching this range, watch which way it breaks, and that's going to determine how high this thing goes. So if we can get buyers to step in, since we're range bound right now in the pre-market, if we break 517.5, a bigger push is going to come up, and we're going to be testing 518 as resistance. But either way, even if we do push up high, we're still at some very, very tight resistance zones. And if we end up losing 516.5, this is going to be turning back down once again. I do want to note there's a risk of us turning back down lower, and the reason I say that is because the 4 hour is starting to contract a little bit. But just to be safe, let's just wait and see how it reacts. So this is our range on SPY. Whichever way it breaks, that's going to determine the bigger move. So I would recommend just being patient and waiting to see which way we break. For the QQQ, is in a very similar position. We have support right now at 442. If we lose this, we could be sinking all the way back down to the 440 area. And then we have resistance at 443.5. It's basically just under 444. So 443.5 to 444 is going to be another resistance zone. I might actually redraw this. But the point I'm just trying to make is that from right here, we're going to be watching to see if the QQQ fails at 444. If we fail to break past 444, we're going to likely turn lower. And if we end up losing 442, we're going to continue lower. If we bounce and break 444, that's how we turn higher. So we have to try to break that. Overall, I'm going to be unbiased, at least for the time being. We did get a little push on the QQQ up to about 444.5. It did push a little bit more, but now it's starting to contract a bit. So we have this range to watch for. Will the QQQ lose 442 and turn more bearish, or do we break 444? We're kind of stuck right now as well on the QQQ, but it's showing, in my opinion, a bit more weakness than SPY. The 4 hour is trying to turn a little bit, and there is a risk of it coming back down to 441, 440, and eventually 438. So it's looking a little bit weaker than SPY, and this has a greater probability of maybe coming down a little bit. But just to be safe, we'll have to wait and see. For Tesla, we had some bad news that came out, very bad news, which invalidated my technical analysis from yesterday. So Tesla is sinking very, very hard, and we'll have to see how well it holds support now around this 172 area. So that's going to be key for today. The reason it's sinking is because this bad news came out that Tesla got a big downgrade. It was downgraded by Wells Fargo. They're saying that it could actually drop all the way down to 125 from a 200 target before. So that's some bad news for Tesla. So that being said, we're going to be watching Tesla right here. If we end up losing 172, a bigger drop is coming to 168, 165 in lower levels. So I wanted to give you guys a warning about this. If we lose 168, we sink lower. If we bounce off 172, which is where we have key support, then we could try to push back up to 175. But it's not going to be that strong because of this bad news. So watch 172 as key support, see if Tesla holds that or not. Otherwise, this thing could sink lower. For Nvida, Nvida, I'm seeing similar patterns developing. This thing pushed all the way up to 938, but we failed to hold above 930. If you want to be bullish, you have to break back above 930 and start pushing. If you're bearish, you want to see this thing basically lose 908 to 900. If we lose 900, a bigger drop is coming. Overall, it kind of rejected, so it's not looking that great on Nvidia. There is a lot of signals that suggest a rejection is coming. This thing might start turning, especially on the 4 hour. So there is a risk, in my opinion, of this actually testing 893 and eventually 8. If that breaks, we could even come all the way down towards 880 all over again. So I'm seeing a weakness on Nvidia's chart. We failed to get a clean break and hold of 940, and it's starting to turn a bit. So this looks a little more bearish, which is not the best of news for the QQQ. But just to be safe, watch for confirmation. Do we continue to lose 900 or not? That's the big support I'm going to be watching for. If we lose it, there's going to be a risk of more downside. So it looks kind of weak on the 4 hour. I want to warn you guys to be careful on NVIDIA. And then last but not least, we have Aapl stock. Aapl, in my opinion, is also following the trend. So What's interesting about Apple is that this is trying to hold up right now. It's just consolidating, and it's still stuck in the range. It's still range bound. So watch 174 as resistance. If we break this, 175 plus is coming. For support, if we lose 172.5, a bigger drop could be coming all the way down to 170.9. So that being said, Apple is still stuck within this range, not really doing a whole lot. And we're going to be watching to see which way this ends up breaking. I would say that otherwise it's going to just remain range bound for the time being. As you guys can see, it's been range bound for many, many hours. Besides one little drop yesterday, it's been range bound. So wait and see. Do we lose 172.5 and start sneaking back down, or do we try to break 174? In my opinion, it could pop a little bit more, but I think it's just going to remain range bound. And then there is going to be a risk of it coming down if we get a big rejection on SPY and the QQQ. So just be very careful. Apple could pop and drop. So watch this range and see what happens. With that being said, guys, be very careful on SPY. Watch that resistance. Can we try to get back above 517.5 and start pushing, or do we end up failing? And also for Microsoft, Microsoft is holding up very nicely, still trying to push up. We're approaching that 420 price target. We're getting closer to it, so watch that very, very carefully. Amazon is popping just a bit, but be a little bit careful. The head and shoulders like structure still is there, and we're barely up in the pre-market. If we get a big rejection here, we could return to 174, so just be careful. And then the same thing with Meta. Meta had to break 500 to remain bullish, but now it's struggling at 500. There is some potential for it to push higher, but I'm a little bit careful right now because 500 is being a very tight resistance and it's actually coming down from it. So if we lose 494, we turn more bearish. If we bounce and break 500, we could turn bullish. Watch and see what happens on Meta. Anyways, that's it for the video. Have a great day, guys. This video is kind of long. I'll see you guys very soon in just a couple of hours, and peace out.